Hello. This is quite the full moon. Okay, man, there's a lot of different angles to cover this. So, obviously, we have moon in Scorpio, we have the sun in Taurus. They're opposite each other, like we talked about in the previous couple of videos. We have the stellium in Taurus of Mercury, Venus, and Uranus. We're going to get back to that in just a little bit as per depth, because the main thing I want to cover first is Mars and Cancer. But before we get to Mars and Cancer, that Taurus stellium, I think to sum up this full moon, at least per that stellium, is the ability to clear out emotional clutter, mental clutter, relationship clutter, clutter as per who we are as people and how we express ourselves. This is a phenomenal opportunity to transform ourselves. Every moon in Scorpio is, and especially the full moon in Scorpio that we experience every year around this time. But for Uranus to be there, Mercury and Venus, and for all of them to be conjunct, this is really probably one of the most, importance. There's no hierarchy of importance when it comes to transits, but this is certainly one of I think, the highlights of 2021 as per transits in general, and especially for full moon transits. So again, we'll get to that in a little bit. The first thing I really want to cover for this is Mars has gone into Cancer, I think about 2 or 3 days ago. And that combination of Mars and Cancer with Moon and Scorpio can be a little bit challenging. Now, again, there's no such thing as bad energies, nothing to be self-conscious of or take personally. If you have these energies natally, it's totally cool. These energies, like all energies, are wonderful in their own ways. But right now, experiencing them around the world, especially for people who don't have these energies natally, it can be a little bit overwhelming to have so much. Both of these energies are known to present the challenges first and then present the blessings or the gifts. So what are these challenges? Mars in Cancer is about imaginary fear. Out of all of the different Cancer placements or even Mars placements, I guess Mars in Pisces can also be challenging in this respect for sure. But Mars in Cancer, around the world, we have to be very cautious to not be too cautious, to not be too afraid, or not let emotions, especially imaginary fears, get out of control. Mars in Cancer is notorious for going, oh, what if this or what if that, and oh no, I'm not gonna go for it. I'm too scared, or oh, I'm it makes me too uncomfortable. It's really important, especially with this full moon, but also over the next 6 weeks, because we have this transit for about 6 weeks. To make sure that we're not giving in to fears, that we're not imagining things. It's so, as human beings, we can really torture ourselves with imaginary fears. And so often, not always, but more often, I would say 99.9% of the time, it seems to me, when we have fears in life, more often they're more they're more so imaginary. What if this happened? What if that happened? But things aren't actually happening. Again, obviously there are things in life that we should be concerned about or feel fear and use. That's an evolutionary biological part of being human to keep us alive, right? But Mars in Cancer triggers that fear even when it doesn't need to be triggered, even when it's not. Again, I always like to use the metaphor, or I guess example metaphor, I don't know how you want to put it, but am I being chased by a bear? Okay, in that case, feel fear. Like, get away from the bear, survive, But so often Mars in Cancer is, what if this happened a month from now? What if this happened a year from now, 5 years from now? What if this happened, even just right now? What if this was going to happen now? It's an energy that is very, very sensitive to emotions, and we need to be extremely conscious. Just take the awareness. That's all we really need for any challenge, for any transit, is just be aware, so that when we start, for example, with this transit, start to trip out, especially over the next 2 days, we'll get into that in just a second with this full moon. When we start to trip out into the emotions of what could be, what if again, usually the fear is going to be around family, not being able to protect oneself, in general, not necessarily in relation to family, but it could sometimes combine that way. Not having enough, fear of scarcity. And if you're a parent, fear for your child. So that's usually how these fears play out. And again, it's just important to be aware and to make sure of, okay, that's not happening. It's not happening. It's good to be concerned. If something is a viable concern, then we need to pay attention to these things and take care of these things. And this is actually a great transit to be able to effectively do so, to have the energy to do so. That's what Mars is all about. Wherever the energy is, like over the last 6 weeks, it was more about mental energy, verbal energy with the Mars and Gemini transit. Now it's more about emotional in relation to those that we love, in relation to what we care about, what we're really passionate about. Could be our career. I think a huge focus though is going to be more so on the home, right? So that's what this energy is kind of in a nutshell. I think why this is even more important, and I've been kind of feeling it today, with the moon in Scorpio. The moon in Scorpio is also known to be very, sometimes paranoid, sometimes giving into fears. So we have this combination, not to mention it's the full moon. So we have all this energy, not to mention that Taurian Taurus stellium. We have a lot of intensity going on. And I think that's just the key, is just be aware. Just be aware of the intensity. Just be aware of your feelings, where they're coming from, what is a concern and what needs to be handled. And I think that's the key, is a concern and a fear, how they're different. Is a concern, you can actually do something about it, especially right here, right now. And if you can't do something right here, right now, then you'll be able to do so in a future right here, right now. Might be a week from now, might be 2 weeks from now, might be a year from now, whatever. But the concern is something practical. This needs to happen, or I don't want this to happen, so I need to do this, this, and this to make sure it doesn't happen. Great. Perfect. Fear is just, again, I'm being chased by a bear, but I'm not actually being chased by a bear. What if this happened, but it's not happening? But what if we need to breathe and put it into perspective, especially over the next 2 days, because again, we have all of this full moon energy. Honestly, that's the main stuff I wanted to cover for this full moon. I think the last thing, and we'll cover this a little bit as time goes on, but again, this Taurus stellium is incredible. I think that going full circle here, making sure that you're transforming yourself in relation to, again, the mind, your relationships, your emotions, and also just your overall being in life. The next 2 days is incredible for that. So if you take time to meditate, if you take time to reflect and really go deeper, don't just react automatically, whether it's sadness or anger or whatever intense emotion you might feel. Go deeper below the surface and figure out what is the core there. Could be your past. We might be looking into past conditioning from childhood. Certainly, that's a huge thing here, especially with Mars and Cancer. But it could also just be seeking to be in tune with the situation as is and not be blowing it out of proportion and not letting fear get in the way. There's a good quote that came up in a reading recently that from a friend, that is, fear is the mind killer. And I think that's the key here, is we want to be conscious and aware of our emotions and the source of our fear, and to dispel that fear and to be free from it. I think one quick thing I want to say about the stellium, the Taurus stellium, is there's a lot of stuff here. We'll cover it in the days to come. But I think when it comes to relationships, it's possible for relationships to reach new modes of being, and that's really positive, especially with really good, kind, affectionate, especially if it's romantic, loving communication. Mercury and Venus are directly conjunct. That's really amazing. And it's also all conjunct Uranus along with the sun. So the ability to move forward definitively, especially over the next 2 days with this full moon, is really powerful. And if you're, again, just consciously aware of how you would like things to move forward, and you're doing your part to help them to grow in that way, things can develop really beautifully. Infinite love to you, my friends. Namaste. Peace.